Alex Lange. Great conversation with Alex. I first got to know Alex on the TEDx stage. He did a talk here in Tampa months ago, and I went to it. I saw all the speakers. His was incredibly moving, talking about the passing of his very, very young son and what he learned from there and the process that he named after him and the lessons that he learned. He's ex-military and decided to sell everything and go traveling with the family. Lots of kids and what happened there, and really, really interesting perspective on motivation and when he separated from the Navy, how he was trying to identify his relationship with discipline. It was so instilled and pervasive there in the military that he rebelled against it after leaving and then learned to love it again in just a different kind of framework. But great conversation with Alex. Really enjoyed it. Very humble, very honest, very genuine. Thank you, Alex. And thank you for listening and watching. Hi, I'm Joey Pinz, and here's my 45-second introduction. After starting my business in the 90s, I started developing poor habits of eating in my diet because of working way too much. Before you know it, I found myself 340 pounds. The doctor told me if I don't lose the weight, I'm not going to see my daughter graduate. Took the next 7 months, lost 130 pounds. People think there's some secret. Ask me, how'd you lose that weight? Like there's some secret. There is no secret. How'd I lose the weight? Just one word, discipline. I've had other successes in life, and I attribute them all to discipline. Now, I'm not the king of discipline, but I believe that it can help all of us. Friends, colleagues convinced me to start a podcast. The podcast mission? How do we better ourselves and society? I talk to interesting people in health, fitness, sport, wellness, business, technology, science, art, and culture. And I eventually ask them how discipline plays a role in their life. Podcast vision, growth through learning from others. For you. I thank you for your time today, Alex. Let's start with this. Tell me, I'm afraid to get into surfing because I'm afraid I'm going to love it so much. It's all I'm going to want to do.
I tell you, man, surfing, it's therapeutic.
Yeah, it sure is.
I lived in the Dominican Republic in 2023 when my son was born, and I didn't surf as much. The kids were always surfing. The truth is, I had a fear of the ocean,
Really?
not the swimming aspect, but the sea creatures that were there underneath me that could eat me. And I allowed that fear to create a story in my head that I wasn't getting in the ocean. When we moved back this past year, I jumped in just every single day, surfing with my sons, connecting, and it really helped all that energy to flow. And then I realized, hey, I wasn't thinking about the fear. I was pushing past my perceived limits that I had, and everything is just amazing. So I love surfing now. My son's a really good surfer, so he puts me to shame a little bit, but hey, I love it.
Are you on the East Coast or the West Coast?
I'm in the Dominican Republic.
Oh, you still are?
Yeah, still in the Dominican Republic.
Oh,
Yeah.
you're still there. Oh, I say. Wow. I wonder how the waves are there versus I'm in Tampa. I'm the West Coast of Florida. It's going to be mild here. But yeah, high waves?
Well, right now they're like 4 to 6 feet. Wow. And height, they can get up to 8 to 10 feet.
Wow.
During the winter, during the summer, it's like 1 to 3 feet.
Very cool. Oh man, that sounds so fun. Last time I saw you, Alex, you were on stage there at TEDx at Bayshore Boulevard, and it was an incredible speech. And how long did it take you to prepare, and why do it?
3 months. It took me about 3 months. And the thing, man, what was really hard about that was I've always been very comfortable with just going off the top, not having much preparation, not I say choreographing, but you know, doing a TEDx speech that you're writing it down, you're practicing it, you're getting feedback from coaches, the event organizers, they want you to memorize it. So that was very challenging for me because that was what I wasn't normally used to. But you asked me why I do it, man. I found myself in Cyprus in February after my son passed, and we were sitting for 4 days, just crying, going through the emotion, the whole family. And I looked at my wife and I said, I need to make something of this. I need to do something with this energy, not avoiding it, but just to give it some type of purpose. And I've loved for my whole life, and I didn't know this, but I knew that it was something I enjoyed. I love speaking. I love connecting with people. And I joined the military because my dad was in the military and I was just following some family lineage. And at a point in my career, there was a breaking point. I was like, I can't do this anymore. And I started coaching, I started talking. So I find the speaking, just sharing my story, helps other people take steps through their own
Hmm.
things that they're processing, if that makes sense.
In this fast-paced MSP landscape, how do you stay ahead? Introducing MSPinfluencer.com, your ultimate hub for MSP news, insights, and community connection powered by Forza Dash. More than 75,000 MSPs subscribe to our MSP Influencer Pulse weekly newsletter, staying informed and ahead of industry trends. Tune in to emerging podcasts from Joey Pinz and leading MSP voices, offering essential tips, powerful insights, and success stories. Explore our multi-authored blogs, crafted specifically for MSP leaders, delivering fresh perspectives and actionable strategies. Celebrate excellence with the industry-leading Forza MSP Influencer Awards, recognizing innovation, leadership, and impact in the MSP community. Join thousands of MSP professionals who trust MSPinfluencer.com to grow their business and expand their networks. MSPinfluencer.com, where today's MSP leaders connect, collaborate, and conquer, all powered by the Forza platform, helping MSP vendors work effectively with MSPs and helping MSPs grow. The way you built it up was so strong. I watched it again since. Nothing replaces, the live event, and they do a really good job there. I mean, it's a nice little theater there, and but walk us through it. So I know you mentioned your son Liam, and he was very, very young, and you were about to go off on a vacation. And doctor, I mean, it's just I don't want to take anything away from it, please.
Yeah. So we were a full-time travel family, and one of the reasons why we decided to full-time travel is because for the majority of my life, I got married young. I had kids young. Liam was the fifth. He was the fifth kid that we had, and I learned a lot of behaviors from my father, which no blame, but I learned a lot of behaviors, and one of those behaviors was I worked a lot, and I was never really present. I was never really home. And so when Liam was born, I had already transitioned out of the military. I had some financial ability to travel and do things. And my wife looks at me and she's like, Alex, let's just pack up. Let's sell everything. Let's lean full into the family and let's just travel the world. So Liam was born at home, no hospital, no midwife, no doctors, nothing. And it was a perfect birth. Like there was no complications, no signs that something was wrong with him. And so we get the passports and everything like that. And in the 9 months, we sail off. I say sail off, but we fly off and to start traveling. And when we were in Cyprus, we were getting ready to go to Turkey. As I had mentioned in the story, we were getting ready for Turkey. We were packing, the kids were playing, and my two oldest sons were pushing Liam on a suitcase. And he's always ridden the suitcases. Like the day before when we start packing, he's like like let me get the suitcase, and the kids would push him. And this time he got caught on the suitcase got caught on a carpet, and he fell forward and he cut his lip. And for the next 14 hours he didn't eat. And he woke up at 4:30 in the morning, as I mentioned, and just screaming, crying, which caused him to faint. And to fast forward through the process, we take them to the hospital. They start to get frantic. They're speaking a different language. We don't know what's going on. And they're just telling me, your son's very critical. We have to take him to another hospital. So we take him to the hospital in Cyprus. And I was not there immediately. I was driving my other four kids in the car. My wife says that she left the room. They sedated him. And then they did these tests, and they said he had this rare congenital heart defect that he wasn't supposed to live past a few days. But he was 18 months old at that time.
And there's pictures of you, during the presentation of holding him and and the time of death was announced, and but you created a process. You call it the Liam process, and it's 4 steps. And the first one is to listen.
Yeah. When I look back, and this is where I'm very grateful for the TED process of giving the speech to other people, because what I started with, Joe, was not what I finished with. I was really deep into his story when I first started. And I think a lot of people that have a desire, because I always have had a desire to give a TEDx talk, when they have this desire, they're like, hey, I want to have a powerful story that just moves people. But it's really important that the story doesn't overshadow the idea. And so my story overshadowed the idea for majority of the process. And Dr. R, he back and forth, he's like, look, Alex, I want you on the stage, but I need you to really pull back to what your process was. And so I sat with myself, man. And when I look back at all the challenging moments, and I have a lot of them, and everybody does. Yes. But when I look back at the challenging moments, before Liam, I would numb. I would just run away. I would work. I was really good at working. I'd overwork. I'd scroll. I'd drink alcohol. I was distracting myself. And that's what majority of people do when pain and challenge come in their life, is they distract, because that's the way that we've been conditioned to do. Well, when I talk about this Liam process, I didn't distract. I didn't scroll. I didn't work. I didn't numb with alcohol or any other substance. I just stayed with it. I learned that emotions, they come in 60 to 90-second waves. And that just breathing through these surges, these emotions, that I started to feel things differently. I started to see things differently. And that's the thing that I love about discipline, and especially with regards to your podcast. When I was thinking about your podcast, I was so good at the military. I was very disciplined, but I was miserable inside. And so when I've talked about discipline with people in other forums, I think it's important that we reframe our relationship to discipline, because people see discipline, and you have to be rigid and you have to be consistent, which I'm not disagreeing, but there's emotions that come up with those. We have to do things that we don't want to do. We still have to do things that we don't want to do because we're having these feelings. Well, we need to create a relationship to the feelings that we're having. And if you look at the root word of discipline, it's to learn, to teach. And you pull a process away from that. So this listen process was really like, let me listen to all of the emotions, all the feelings, everything that's flooding in. Don't distract or numb.
And the overall theme, Alex, is the whole myth of living a pain-free life.
Yeah.
Why do we have that?
Well, I think, like if you look at social media, if you look at how people project onto the online space, we didn't have the reach that we have now before. Growing up, we didn't have the social media, the Instagrams, the Facebooks, the ability to connect to people across the world. And so we didn't see what people portrayed online as perfect. And a lot of people say that, hey, if you're successful, if you have all these nice things, like you're going to be happy. And I'm not saying that you're not going to, part of you will be happy, but that doesn't mean that you are not going to not to feel pain.
Right.
And I think that's what people are pushing, is like, hey, you're going to be successful, you're going to do good things, you're going to be famous, or whatever the case may be, right? You're going to climb the corporate ladder, and you'll be okay. But the reality is we all are going to experience pain. That's part of the human experience.
And your second in this Liam process is allow you to become part of you.
Yeah, allow it to be a part of you. Integrate it. So you're feeling the emotions. You're listening. You're feeling them, and you're not running away from it. You're not hiding it. One thing that I feel like is the new currency in the world is transparency and authenticity. AI, in this mode of AI, a lot of people are using AI, but what people are yearning for is authenticity and transparency. And over the last couple of years, that's what I've done. I've just been, hey, I'm not perfect. I got some good things about me, and I got some things that I need to work on, but I'm gonna give you the full spectrum of what I'm experiencing. So with the integration pieces, like, allow it to become a part of you. Don't run away from it. Don't suppress it. Don't fight it. Don't numb it. It just because it happened to you, that experience happened to you, it doesn't define who you are. And your story, which goes into the action aspect, and I might be jumping a little bit here, but your story, sharing your story, talking through your story, taking action gives permission. It paves the way for other people to do the same.
Mm.
Real quick, Joe, I'm gonna drop back to 2021, which was my toughest year. Losing a child in 2025 was pretty tough, but I got hit with multiple things in 2021. My daughter was diagnosed with a brain tumor. I was diagnosed with 5 brain tumors. My wife asked me for a divorce. My wife had an abortion and then asked me for divorce. And then I lost my job. I got discharged from the Navy for not giving the COVID vaccine. And
Wow.
when I look back at that process, like when I look back at all of that, it I was fighting it. I thought I was alone. I stayed suppressed. I was suppressing, excuse me. And when I reached out and I started to find out, I went to a men's group, an online men's group, where we were just talking about challenges and our problems. I realized I wasn't alone.
Hmm.
And listening to other men's stories, it paved the way for me to share as well. And
Mm.
I think that's the biggest piece about transparency and authenticity is there's so many people afraid to put out what they're going through in the world because judgment. But majority of the people, and even at the TEDx talk, some of the other stories, other TED talks, they were received so well, and
Yeah.
so they're helping so many people in the world.
But when you have a year like that, Alex, that you just described, health issues with yourself, with your family, with divorce, what do you do? How do you approach it? Do you take it in small parts? Do you try to bury it? How did you survive it?
Yeah, my crutch, man, was working. It
Mm.
really was working. The first part of the year, I didn't start waking up to what was going on until uh, October, November timeframe of 2021. But up to that, when my daughter was diagnosed with a brain tumor in February of that year, I I only got like 2 or 3 days off to be with her. The military is very demanding, so you're kind of going around your work schedule of the military. And so when I went back to work, I was just working long hours. And when I'd get home, I would scroll. I'd go to I'd kiss the kids. I'd play a little bit. I'd go to sleep. I'd do it over again.
Hmm.
And so I was doing that for the first part of the year. But in October, when my wife asked me for that divorce, I started to look at all of the things that I had gone through in my life up to that point in that year. And I was like, what is the common denominator? I was the common denominator.
Hmm.
I'm blaming everybody external to me, but where am I? At what point do I point the fingers back at me and say, what responsibility do I have in all of this? And I'm not sitting here saying that I'm a firm believer. There's a process called the conscious leadership, and the conscious leadership says that there's 100. You take 100% responsibility. So if me and you, Joe, we got something going on, we got a situation, and we're having a hard time, you take 100% responsibility, and I take 100%
Hmm.
responsibility. I'm not going to take any more of your responsibility. You're not going to take more of mine. So when I look back at that year, I'm like, okay, I need to take 100% of my responsibility of how I'm showing up in this world. And it goes back to, as I mentioned before, that as men, we emulate the most masculine relationship that we experienced growing up. It's a subconscious thing. We're not aware of it.
Hmm.
But if we bring awareness around it, we can change it. So I was showing up the way that my father was showing up in our family. My mom was a drug addict. My dad was a single father, functional alcoholic, provided. And so I saw him just surviving his whole life.
Hmm.
So up to that point, I was surviving. So the question that I asked myself is, where am I not taking responsibility? Well, I wasn't taking responsibility for how my attitude of how I showed up in the moment. I wasn't taking responsibility in the sense of listening to what's going on, the emotions, the things that are pushing away. My wife was wanting me to be more emotionally present. She was wanting me to be more physically present, mentally present. I was checking out. So those were all in October, November timeframe. Those were all the questions that process is what helped me through. We're surrounding myself with other men first, as I talked about, and then asking myself, where am I not taking responsibility in my
Hmm.
life?
So when you ask yourself that question and you have these hard conversations with yourself, it's you really can't look for others. I mean, it's really working on yourself. So
Yeah.
how do you reset yourself from all these duties of fatherhood and husbandry and friendship to work on yourself like that?
Yeah. It's, I'm not there. I don't think anybody ever gets there.
Yeah.
First of all, it's a process.
Yeah.
And, when we bring it back to the discipline topic, but this
Mm.
process, you have to fall in love with the process.
Hmm.
Everybody wants the prize. No one wants the process. But if you really slow it down, the process is the prize. Like when you get to work on yourself, when you get to see where you're not showing up, where you're not feeling met, and for me, bringing it back to me, it was about reparenting my own self. So
Hmm.
having kids is been like the ultimate hack, and I say that in a true way. I have 5 kids. My wife just gave birth to our sixth
Wow.
4 days ago. So
Congratulations.
it's been a crazy year, man. Losing Liam at the beginning of the year, and then we unexpectedly got pregnant, and then he decided to come. Another boy decided to come December 30th, right before we
Wow.
close out the year.
Wow.
But to go back to your question is like for me, it was about reparenting myself. And when I had these challenges with my kids or other situations in my life, I took a deep breath. I created a space as much as possible. There's a book called A Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl, and Viktor Frankl talks about our freedom lies in our ability to choose between the stimulus and the response.
Hmm.
So that's our freedom. So I continually asking myself when I get agitated or I get angry or I get sad or whatever emotions, I ask myself, where am I? Like, what am I feeling? What is going on internally? I'm checking in with myself. Sometimes I'm putting a hand on my chest, or I'm breathing deep, or I'm grunting. There's a lot of research out there that audible noises and breathing helps pass the emotions and helps pass trauma. So
Hmm.
there's the somatic aspect to all of this. But for me, it's taking in doses. You can't take it all at once. You don't eat a huge elephant all at once. You eat it one bite at a time. So one piece at a time, man, and I just breathing through it and I know a direction I want to go.
Hmm.
And I've worked with a lot of men. A lot of men don't have a direction of where they want to go. They've been taught for majority of their life that have you ever heard, Joe, the happy wife happy life mantra?
Of course.
And so that's the thing, that whatever my wife wants, whatever my spouse wants, whatever the kids want, whatever, like I don't have a voice. And so many men lose their own identity, their own vision of what they want in the world,
Hmm.
because they're always saying whatever my wife wants. And that for me, I had to get clear on, where do I want to go?
Hmm.
How do I want to get there? And I don't need to have all of the questions answered. I just need to know the direction that I want to go.
Yeah, the whole peace at any price thing has its big downside there. You have to think about yourself and think about how, I mean, hopefully if you're happy, everyone is happy. It seems to me, Alex, that the this Liam process that you created was actually pretty much created even before his passing with the other difficulties, barriers you had to pass. True?
I would agree with that. I just didn't have the awareness around it, uh,
Mm.
and that's when I look back at the TEDx process, that's what helped me the most.
Mm.
I knew this was going to be a therapeutic process when I wrote the first TEDx cop draft, and I started reading it, and I broke down in tears.
Mm.
And I stood up. I had my poster boards on the wall. I was practicing, working on all of the things with regards to TEDx, and I couldn't see the words because how watery my eyes were.
Mm.
And when Dr. R, he sent me the message, he's like, look, I need you to just sit down and tell me your process of how you're moving this, how you move this through. Looking back, I was like, man, I already had this.
Hmm.
I just I didn't know, there was no name for it.
Hmm.
And what better way to honor my son Liam than, create this
For
process?
him. Step one's listen, allow, become part of you. 3, one step close that matters, and 4, let it multiply.
Yeah. So 3 was action, right? And it's taking aligned action. And I'm a firm believer, especially since losing my son, that just because someone passes away or you experience something challenging in your life doesn't mean that you can't have joy in the world. I quite I think on the other end that the way through grief and loss and challenges is through self-love. It's through filling your cup. You have to do things that you love so you can be more vibrant when the moments hit that you can't breathe, or you're crying, or you're screaming, or you're just not feeling it. You need to have that cup full, because you can't pour from an empty cup. So that it's aligned action. What do you like to do, and do more of it? It's a philosophy called positive psychology. I'm taking you from 0 to 10. You're gonna focus on what you do well and do more of it. And so that's what I did. I started, I got back to Dominican Republic, and I started to surf. I started to work out. I started to write. I started to speak. As I mentioned to you, like, I love speaking. I love talking, doing podcasts, and the TED Talk, that was been a dream of mine. So I was really excited about that. And then as I shared my story, as I talked more, as I connected with people, and this is the integration piece that's so important, is that when I introduce myself and we're talking, and if I mention that my son passed away, the first, and it's an automated response, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, I can't imagine. They start to get really uncomfortable. And I'm like, look, I'm just sharing it because it's a part of my story, but I'm I'm processing. I'm not running away from it. I don't need you to do all of give me these condolences and sympathy. Like, I really appreciate it, but it's not why I was doing that. And just being open in my process, more people have come to me and said, "Hey, I'm going through a tough time with my wife. I don't know how to handle my kids. I financially, I'm struggling. I know I look perfect on the outside, but I'm struggling, and things are falling apart." And just those conversations, it creates a deeper connection. I was listening to a Huberman podcast a few weeks ago, and Huberman says that the way that we process trauma, how we let it move through our body, and one of the means is through social interaction, is through social connection. And I don't have an answer to this, but this is just what came up right now, Joe, was, if that's the way we process trauma, why are we trying to portray people portraying perfect lives on social media? Because we have a generation that is behind us, that's coming up. My kids, your kids, other kids, right? That are on social media, that are, I mean, my kids, I'm very strict. They don't have phones. They don't have computers. There's not much screen time in our house. But where I'm going with this is, there's a lot of kids that live on social media, and they see that, and then they don't know how to live in their own life. They don't know how to have joy, because they're comparing their lives to this fake perfect life online to reality. And with that multiplication that I talk about, most people, I tell them the story, we connect, they talk to me about their stories, and that's the piece, man. It just ripples. It's like throwing a rock into a pond, and you just see the ripples go.
It occurs to me, Alex, like, the TEDx, did it help those that listened and continue to listen more than it helped you? I wonder.
For me, I'm always been a firm believer. What I do, my Instagram posts, or the talks that I've given recently, or the TEDx, it's all for me. I think that's the most important people have to realize, is that when you share, when you express your creative process, whatever it may be, you're doing it for yourself first. Because if you're doing it for others, you're lost the vision of where you're trying to go. And I've honestly, it's just about reparenting. It's about addressing things that are coming up internally, and sharing. And I'm going to go off topic for a second, Joe, and then I'll throw it back to you. But I recently gave a talk. I recently did a speaking academy in Miami, and there was 55 of us, and amazing speakers. These speakers were, CEOs, they're founders, they're New York Times bestsellers. Like, I'm talking about very accomplished people, and they're giving their introductions, and I'm sitting there, and I start to get this like tingling feeling. I can't breathe. Like I'm constricted breathing. My hands are sweating, and I'm asking myself, "What's going on, Alex? Like, you love speaking. Why are you feeling this?" But I realized that it was my self doubt coming up. Because I had tied my identity into accomplishments for a long time. I was so successful in the military, and that was my identity. So when I got out of the military, I felt lost. I felt confused. I felt worthless because I didn't have that title. I didn't have that accolade. So I'm in this room, and I asked myself, what do I have? What have I been living by? And as I mentioned to you with the Liam process, I just opened up with my heart, and I talked from my heart. I was authentic. I I was transparent. I was telling people what I was feeling, my thoughts, all of that. And at the end of the speaking academy, there's this American Idol type contest where the speakers compete, and I ended up winning first place. And the winner gets to speak in front of 1,500 people this summer in Estonia at a Mind Valley University. And why do I mention that to you is because I still have, I'm not a complete person. We're not all complete. We're working on parts of ourselves. And so when I share online, right lately, it's been like this identity, like this self-doubt that I've been working through a lot. And I don't know where I'm going with that online, but I want people to know that when you do have success, when you do take the step, when you do the one thing, there's going to be another level that you unlock, and you're going to learn more about yourself. And you have to navigate through that. And then once you do that, you're going to go to the next step and to the next level and to the next level. And that's the process.
Does spirituality fit in your life?
It does. It does. For me, like I was thinking about, if I was to, how can someone, besides the Liam process, how can someone turn pain into purpose?
Right.
One of the things that helped me a lot is I had a rock at his celebrational life. I had a bunch of rocks, and people wrote on the rocks. And I said, hey, you can either take the rock home, put it on your mantle. You can throw the rock in the ocean, because we did his celebrational life on the beach. Or you can just leave it on the beach somewhere. And I had a gentleman who was a veteran as well. He wrote Liam, and he put love in all moments with a tree. And he gave me that rock. And so that rock was like my anchor point. When I was feeling sad, when I was going through it, I'd allow that emotion to process. I'd allow that 60 to 90 seconds. And then I'd have that rock. And I'd think about the love that I received from him, about how our life during his life, like how we traveled and experienced, we were always very present. He wasn't, there wasn't many moments where he was left alone, between my 4 kids and us. Like, he was always played with, he was always loved. And so I think about the presence part. So the rock, that anchor point, having something. It could be a rubber band. If you're having a negative thought and you need to get out of that negative thought, you can snap a rubber band on your wrist. But for me, it was a rock. And then also it was numbers. So when Liam passed away, we were in house number 2. The first hospital bed that he was in was number 2. And then the last hospital bed he was in was number 2. And I made this connection pretty quick. I was like, oh, 2, 2, 2. And, the spirituality aspect, when you look into that, 222 is like, hey, you're on the path that you're supposed to be. Everything is happening the way it's supposed to happen. And after that, through the processing, I just read a lot. I read a book called Your Soul's Plan by Robert Schwartz. I read A Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. I read The Untethered Soul by Mike Singer. And a lot of the things that I'm getting from this, when you really sit with yourself, goes back to the listening aspect. When you sit with yourself and you bring it inward, a lot of the thoughts, a lot of the feelings, a lot of the emotions are identities, dads, husbands, CEOs, entrepreneurs, podcast hosts, whatever it may be. That's not who we are. We're our consciousness. And I'm not at a place, and I'll be very honest, I'm not at a place yet where I will go on podcasts and talk about that process, because I don't feel like I've gotten a deep enough grasp on it to say, hey, like, let's dive into who you are. But for me, I do believe that we choose everything that happens to us in this life. And the reason why we choose it is because we are here to learn something from it. And looking at all of those challenging moments in our life, all those things that we go through, the question is to not ask, why did it happen to me? But what is this here to teach me? And when we have curiosity and wonder, man, our mind just goes crazy. For me, at least, it does.
What if discipline wasn't about punishment, but about unlocking your best self? I spent 2.5 years writing Discipline for Greatness because discipline changed my life. And I know it can change yours too. This isn't theory. Inside, you'll find real, practical steps you can use immediately to focus better, build stronger habits, reduce stress, accomplish your goals, and bring more balance to your life. Whether you're trying to get healthier, improve your career, or simply feel more control, this book gives you the framework. Start today. Grab your copy of Discipline for Greatness at joeypinz.com/book. Thank you. Completely anecdotal, Alex, but I have found, I didn't read this anywhere, I've compiled this myself, that my friends, colleagues, generally get stuck in 3 different ways, multiple ways, but generally I find in these 3 categories. One is trying to control things they can't control. Just often I hear that, getting upset about just, whatever, traffic, the weather, or just or people, the things they can't control, just getting completely stuck there. 2 is the whole, and this goes along with what you said, but it's like the whole holding off on happiness. I'll be happy when I lose the weight, when I get the raise, or if this person treats me well, or if this happens, when certainly you're in complete control of your happiness. And the last is, again, this is anecdotal, but I find that people get stuck with something that happened in the past, or happened, that they're really focused on, they can't break away from it, or conversely, what's going to happen in the future, and they're so dead on it that they get stuck. Thoughts?
Yeah, no, I love that, man. I love it because you're spot on, right? Like I'm going to try to hit every single one a little bit, but part of I've said this before, and I've gotten people look at me like I'm crazy, and it's okay. But I tell them, I'm like, hey, pain is an illusion. Pain is an illusion, and let me tell you why. Give me 30 seconds. I always tell them, give me 30 seconds. And if I'm wrong, you can walk away, you can laugh at me, you can, whatever you need to do. But if you go and you close your eyes and you think about a painful moment in your life, something that you've experienced, where does your mind go? And so I have every time, it takes them 10 seconds. They're like, man, that time when, or I got this thing going on here. And they go back to a moment in time, like you said, in the past, or they go into the future. And so our mind is creating this pain based off of something that's not happening right now at this moment. So when you bring it back to the present moment, so then I ask them, okay, I want you to just check in with your body right now. Like, where are you at? How do you feel? How's everything going? And they're like, well, besides like the little bit of a fluttering and frustration that built inside from thinking about that, I'm safe. I'm okay. And I'm like, that's what I'm trying to tell you. Pain is an illusion. You're going back to something. It used to be a present moment. Liam's death was a present moment. And the way that we replace the past is with choosing how we show up in the present moment. The more present moments that we have, it replaces the past present moments that we had. And so that's the thing with regards to people, is when you're having these thoughts, acknowledge them. Like, okay, I hear you. Where am I at right now? Now, if you're being attacked or things like that, obviously you might not be safe. But where I'm going with this is if you're doing this in an environment where there's not any things happening that could harm you physically, most of the time you're gonna look and say, okay, I'm safe. It's just it's my mind playing this trick. What was the first one you said? I drew a blank on.
Trying to control things they can't control.
Yeah, and that's another thing that I've looked at for myself, man. Is like I can't control my kids.
Right.
Like I can't. We can control our kids on how we show up.
Yes.
But there's this thought that came to my mind that often it's from an old spiritual teacher. His name's Dewey Freeman. And he says, when there's no trust, there's control. And in order for us to create power in our life, we have to have the ability to influence and be influenced. And with this, every time I think about control, I think about grabbing sand because I live near a beach, and you just you squeeze it and the sand, it falls out. But if you just create this safe container, it will stay there until you're ready to let go. And so for me, I did a seminar, a workshop years ago when I was first starting to do public speaking. And one of the exercises I did was I had people get a piece of paper and I had them split it in half, put a line down the middle. And then on one side, I had them label it what I control and what I don't control. And then I had them take 2 to 5 minutes on each side and list out what is it that they control and what is it that they don't control, and focus more on what you can control. And there's a tie back into the Liam process on the action aspect. When I say aligned action, it's things that you can do to control your own happiness. You mentioned also about people pushing off their happiness until the end, and then they get to the end and they're like, nothing's changed.
Right.
And then they're like, man, this is not what it was supposed to be. And that's the piece of being able to celebrate the process when you're in it. Every night, most nights, I'm not going to say every night, but most nights we gather around the table and I ask my kids, micro wins. What are micro wins for the day? And we force it. I say I force it, and then they copy me. I'm like, hey! And I jump up and they smile and they clap and they celebrate their own micro wins for the day. And that's the piece is we have to get into, no matter how big or how small they are, we have to celebrate those milestones in your process. There's a book, I don't want to dive too much into it because I read it years ago, but there's a book called Happier by Ben Shahi. He has an interesting last name. And he talks about the rat racer, the hedonius. The hedonius is like you push everything off, right? And that's the piece is we've been conditioned to like not celebrate till we accomplish the process. And that's where I think there's been a negative connotation to the discipline. When we go back to discipline, there's this negative connotation around it because we can't be happy until we're done. But what if Joe, if I want to run, an Ironman that's going to make me train for a year or a year and a half or whatever, I can't be happy that whole time. Well, I don't want to do that right off the bat. Who wants to not be happy for a year and a half? And so that's the piece is when we really pull back the layers to discipline. It's to teach, to learn, to understand, and it's to create a system. And so as you're in this, and I'm going to use the Ironman act, like the analogy here is when you're in that Ironman process, celebrating when you're doing the 25-mile bike ride training or the swimming or the running, you're celebrating actually taking the step and doing it.
Yeah, you certainly are. Going back to your pain issue or a point, is suffering optional?
Agree. Yes, I do think it's optional. Viktor Frankl, when I read his book, he's the one that really highlighted that for me. I'm not going to steal that. But Viktor Frankl, he says, the way that we find meaning in life is through its creation It's through receiving, and it could be love from someone, giving love. And then it's the last thing is how we choose, the attitude of how we show up in suffering. And I heard a quote from someone recently, and it validated it. They said, "You don't experience life; you experience the emotions that you feel in life." And where our attention goes, our energy flows. And if we focus on the suffering, we're gonna suffer. But for me, the one thing that I have done consistently is, and I don't want this to get confused of not feeling the feelings, because you still feel all of the emotions that come up. I still feel, last night I was crying. You know, it's been an interesting having a newborn and getting these memories from my last child. Like, I still feel them. But the suffering aspect, I can pity, I can be a victim, or I can create the life that I want to live. And when I feel the emotions, I'm crying, I'm breathing, I'm just there. And then I have this switch, the anchor point again, right? That rock, love in all moments. And I don't carry it with me everywhere, but I've carried it so much that I think about it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So once I go through those emotions, I take a second and I focus on how can I use this for myself and for others. And my mission before Liam passed away was to just help people live and lead with purpose in their life. And that's the biggest thing. Most people are just doing the 9 to 5, they're doing the routine, and they're disconnected from themselves and who they want to be in the world. Most people, I asked a question in a talk recently, and I said, how many of you, raise your hand, how many of you can say that you absolutely love your job? No one raised their hand.
Right.
And then I said, okay, how many of you, if I gave you enough money that you were taken care of for the foreseeable future, would do something different? Everybody raised their hand. And that's the crazy thing to me, is we are doing things that we hate, but just because it's financially providing for us. And there's a book by Gay Hendricks. It's called Your Zone of Genius. And he talks about most people get stuck in their zone of excellence, which is they're good at what they do and they're getting paid to do it, but it's draining them. It's taking from them. Rather than the zone of genius is you're doing things that you love, that fill you up, that's helping other people, and that it's giving you energy to show up in the world in a better way. And people are stuck in their zone of excellence because their basic needs are taken care of, the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? So for me, it's like, how can I help people get out of that zone of excellence to the zone of genius? And that's once again, the action piece is the aligned action. You gotta sit with yourself. You gotta create a connection to the things that you really love to do, so you can do more of it. And that doesn't mean you drop off the other responsibilities that you have in your life, but you now integrate that into your life. And for me, it's always been before, in the morning, before I have my other responsibilities with my kids, my wife, coaching, speaking, whatever the case may be. But it's being able to do more of the things that you love so you can be a better person in the world.
The 3 lessons that you kind of exited the TED Talk were really, really good ones. The first one, life is short, presence matters, love is always worth the risk, and lastly, purpose is not found in perfection. Very astute and profound lessons, Alex.
Yeah. It's been my life in the sense of recently, no one asked to lose a child.
Right.
Like no one consciously asked to lose a child. I know I mentioned earlier, we subconsciously, we come in this world choosing things that are good for us. But or that we want to push us higher. But for me, looking back at his 18 months, I I was a full-time, I was active duty Navy for 13 and a half years.
Hmm.
I was not present as a father. And for some reason in his life, I was present. I was a full-time dad. I was there. I was holding him. We had a different connection.
Hmm.
You have a few kids, if I remember
I have
correctly.
two daughters
Two
in their
daughters, right?
20s. Yes. Yeah.
And I mean, so when I say this, you'll understand what I'm saying. Is like we're not going to say we have a favorite child,
Never.
but I can tell you that I had a different connection with Liam,
Hmm.
and it was built on presence.
Hmm.
It was truly built on presence. And the other two that I think about is when you think about love, I'm not thinking about like romance and intimacy. I'm thinking about the energetic form of love,
Hmm.
right? Opening your heart and just giving and receiving. I wouldn't change a single thing that happened in my life. Like in general, I wouldn't change a single thing. But with Liam specifically, I wouldn't change anything. Because when the doctors, after he passed, were sitting in the room and the doctor says he passed perfectly. And I made a face. I'm like, how can someone pass away
Hmm.
perfectly?
Hmm.
And she said, with his condition, with everything that he had going on internally, he could have died at any minute. He could have died in your kid's arms. He could have died in his sleep. He was in the medical terminology, he was unstable. And so when I think about love is always worth the risk, like I wouldn't change anything because of the amount of love that I got from him, the amount of healing that I received from him in my own transformation as a father and as a husband and as a leader. And then the perfection. So many people don't take a step because they think that it needs to be perfect.
Hmm.
And it goes back into that authenticity and that vulnerability piece. Nobody wants to see perfect because life isn't perfect. Perfect is on social media. Perfect is a portrayed, it's a perceived thing. And in my own process, I wasn't healing because I wasn't taking the step for a long time because I was trying everything to be perfect.
Hmm.
As soon as I just let it go, it's just showing up. Like at this podcast, a lot of the trainings that I've been to, there's a lot of good in it. They talk about having speech maps, and they talk about having you need to have this whole full circle moment. And my philosophy is show up. What's meant for you will happen. You have the lived experience. You have the memories here. The message that needs to come out will come out. And that's what it's all about, is just showing up even in the middle of the hard and the messy.
Yeah, don't bury it. Don't put it off. Alex, has there been something 10 years ago, 10, 15 years ago that you strongly believed in that you no longer believe?
Yes. Traditionalism.
Ah.
Traditionalism. I tell you that I was the poster child of traditionalism. When, if I look back at how everything was done, I never questioned anything. I'm like, oh, well, that's how it's always been done. We'll just continue to do it.
Hmm.
I'm perfect. I feel like I'm perfect. I've come out fine with all of the challenges in my life. We're just going to continue down that path. And then like I mentioned in 2021, and the process was finalized in 2022. But when I got kicked out of the military for not taking the COVID vaccine, that was the first time in my life where I stood up against something,
Hmm.
where I had a belief and I stood up for my belief. There's the saying that if you don't stand up for something, you'll fall for anything.
Yeah.
And that's what I was in my life. Like I wouldn't stand up for things because I was always told to just follow what you've been told. My dad was in the military for 20 years. So it was ingrained into me my whole life. Just follow the law and order, follow everything, and you'll be okay.
Hmm.
But now getting kicked out of the military, and it's an honorable discharge. Like everything is there's nothing bad on my record, but now I look back and that was the catalyst for living a life of purpose,
Hmm.
of getting to choose how I wanted to be as a father, getting to choose how I wanted to be as a husband, getting to choose the career that I want to do, getting in front of people and talking and sharing a message and hoping to inspire people to do the same. And a lot of people think that they can't do that because it's a self-limiting belief that comes from something when they were a child or when they were at a young age. And as we talked about earlier in this podcast, what we focus on grows. So if I'm thinking about like, oh, I can't do this, the self-doubt that I was experiencing in Miami and occasionally have been experiencing recently, if I continue to put full into that belief, my mind is going to look for evidence and it's going to find it. It's going to find evidence because that's what our minds do. And for me, now I've educated myself and the different alternatives out there, you know, the different beliefs and things of that nature and how we live and things of that matter, to now where I know what I stand for. I know what I believe. And I'm not a person, I've never been a person that like, because I believe this, you need to believe it too. I've always been open and curious. Okay, tell me why you feel that way. Like I'm interested. I'm interested on why you want to feed your, and I use this as a real life because I said this before. I'm interested on why you want to feed your kids dyes and sugar, you know, processed sugar and all these other things. Why you want to let your kids watch excessive amounts of TV. And people, you know, we've had some really productive conversations around having curiosity around other people's views.
Yeah, curiosity is one of the main reasons why I talk to great people like yourself. I have to continually learn and ask questions. Is there a question, Alex, that you wished more people would ask you?
Ooh. You know, I haven't thought about that. Give me a second.
Is there a question that you wish more people would ask you?
Nothing's coming to my mind. But I will say that I would reverse this. I would flip this,
Hmm.
and I would want people to ask themselves,
Hmm.
what is it that they really want in their life?
Hmm.
If money wasn't an issue, because there is studies, majority of why people do what they do is financial.
Right.
That financial aspect. We have to make money to eat, to have a shelter, all that thing. So I get that. But I would ask people, what is it that you really want to do in this life
Hmm.
if money was not an issue? How would you be? What would your ideal day look like? What kind of work would you do? Who would you help? What things would you do? How would you allocate your time with your wife, with your kids? If you don't have wife and kids, how would you allocate your time? What things would you be giving back to? What causes? What movements? Because I believe firmly that we all want to serve in our life.
Hmm.
Service is what truly gives us fulfillment in life. And it doesn't have to, you know, it all looks different ways. It doesn't look the same. But you know, for instance, your podcast, it's service to others. You're creating a platform. You've created a platform where you bring some of the brightest minds on and you're talking about information and giving people access to that to help them have better lives, to create processes and procedures around discipline.
Hmm.
And that's where I'm at is, okay, what do you want for your life?
Hmm.
Stop looking externally all the time. I'm a sports guy, so one of the things I always say is everybody gets so ramped up about the Super Bowl or
Hmm.
the national championship or the big games.
Hmm.
How are you getting ramped up for your own big game, for your own Super Bowl, for your own national championship?
Yeah, very, very true. It's important to have goals, but remember the process to get there. And I appreciate the one thing I'm working on, Alex, is accepting compliments, by the way, and thank you. So I started my business back in the 90s. Was working way too hard, not paying attention to myself. Like, you know, you're no stranger to this, just working too hard, 14, 16-hour days, nothing. And then, you know, putting nutrition and exercise in the back. Next thing I know, in front of the doctor, I'm at 340 pounds. So I'd gained all this terrible weight. I knew I was getting heavy, but didn't think I was a 46-inch waist. I just didn't know that I just got that big. Your body gets used to it. Your body's wonderful, especially in your 20s. So she says to me, if you don't lose this weight, you're not going to see your daughter graduate. So my oldest daughter was just born. So that, that didn't motivate me. It angered me. Right. So I'm driving home thinking, okay, I did this to myself. I can abuse myself all I want, but it's much bigger than me. I am much bigger than me. So I spent the next 6, 7 months, lost about 130 pounds, kept it off. Can't look at this as a finishing line, right? These are lifelong changes. And you mentioned it more than once. When people ask me how'd you do it? There's no secret. I always say discipline. So specifically, how does discipline, given your background, given your military background, given your family, given who you are, how does discipline play a role in your life, Alex Lange?
I recently, and I say recently, within the last couple of years, had to change my relationship to discipline. And I said this a couple times, but I'll say it very transparent. I was really good at the military. They preach discipline. They have a bunch of processes and procedures that you learn, you build into your decision making, how you move forward throughout the days. But I hated who I was, like what I was doing and how I showed up in the world. So when I got out of the military, I went through a process where I didn't know who I was. There's this identity shift, crisis, and I didn't want to have discipline on anything. I was so repulsed by discipline,
Right.
that even the word discipline, because of how I've connotated it, like I made it like, oh, you have to do this even if you don't want to do it, blase blase. So now for me, once again, I mentioned to you at the beginning, is that it's all about teaching and learning from the things that happen in our life. And as I was taught, you need to be disciplined in your approach growing up, even if you don't want to do it, even if you don't feel like it, you still need to do it. For me, I've added in a layer of feeling into this. You mentioned anger about, you gained all this weight. Someone told you like, hey, if not for you, for your daughter, and you got angry. And a lot of people don't realize that anger is wisdom. Like when we really feel into these emotions, they are fuel for our fire. They're fuel for our purpose in the world. And so how discipline works for me is I really feel into everything that's going on. I said in a talk a few months ago, I said there was a point in my life where, so there's two types of people. There's the type that they're all in their head and they're no connection to themselves or to others. And then there's the type that they're all connection to people and never in their head. And for me, the process is coming back into being equal, like balanced, because it's so important to be able to connect with self and knowing what you want and connecting with others. And then also, thinking about things and being able to have, the analytical side. So where I'm going with this is, my discipline process has changed from a rigid approach to hey, I get to experience life in its full form. Just because I commit to doing something doesn't mean that I'm not going to get to be happy through that process of doing it. I'm going to bring the full spectrum of life into this. I'm going to feel the anger. I'm going to feel the sadness. I'm going to feel the happiness, the joy, the creative feelings, all of it. I'm not suppressing anything because it all comes from the same place. And when we get to feel all of the emotions associated with it, we get to feel the full spectrum of life. I mentioned that in my TED Talk. You get to really feel the full spectrum. That is living. That is the full human experience. So my discipline, when I think about discipline now, I think about love. I think about love and being able to give myself a gift. And maybe it's woo-woo. I don't know.
It doesn't matter.
Maybe it's woo. But when I've created a different relationship to it, it's It's felt easier to do the thing, if that makes sense.
Sure does. Sure does. What motivates you, Alex?
Well, I can tell you my desire to challenge myself in all aspects of life. That's number one. My kids who are running and looking.
Yes, I hear.
Yeah. My kids, we live in the Dominican Republic and it's pouring rain outside, and they hear me in here talking. So my kids motivate me, man. They keep you young, they keep you vibrant. They're your teachers. Like I'm a firm believer. Like I learn from my kids all the time. When stuff comes up internally, like I need to be better, not just for them, but for myself. So my wife and I really, what motivates me is I know that there's many people out there, and this is from my own upbringing. I didn't come from a good upbringing. There's many people out there struggling because they're stuck here, and they're not taking the time to connect with themselves and understanding what it is that they want in the world. And these people, they're not people in poverty. They're people that are successful. They're people that are really successful, but they're stuck here and they want something different in their life. And they're just afraid to take that step because fear, false evidence appearing real. We've created that belief, and now we're looking for evidence and we're searching hard for it.
So given the motivation of self-improvement, betterment of your kids, of legacy, how do you measure success?
Well, I bring it more into an internal perspective. There's different forms of success. Obviously, we all know like the external form of success and accolades and financial and things of that nature. But for me, I define success as my ability to pull back the layers of the conditions from my father and the conditions of my mother and find out who I really am in this world. So being able to show up in the world from a place of who I am rather than conditions that were put upon me. And self-awareness, having self-awareness on who we are, why we are the way we are, along those lines.
Has there been anything, Alex, in the last month or so that you changed your mind on?
Yeah, you know what? I'll be very transparent because we talk about transparency here. I've been having a lot of resistance come up inside about talking about my son's death. Like I love speaking. I love inspiring. I was telling my wife this last night. I don't know if I want to continually talk about it because I've never been a sad person. I mean, I've had a lot of things happen to me, but I've always somewhat tried to bring joy into it. Like tried to navigate to the positives, look for the positives in life. And for my son, every time I talk about my son, when people ask me to speak and, podcasts and things, I am so grateful for the opportunity. But what I see is people, it's a heavy story. It's a very heavy story. And so I tell my wife, like, I don't know if I want to continue talking about my son. I really want to help people in a different way. So that's the big thing that's been weighing on me recently, especially with this keynote speech coming up in July. How do I approach that?
Want to show your love for discipline, inspiration, and the Joey Pinz podcast? Now's your chance. Introducing the brand new Joey Pinz merch store, where style meets discipline. Choose from premium apparel, cozy hoodies, stylish hats, durable bags, and your new favorite coffee mug, all featuring the iconic Joey Pinz logo. Perfect for podcast fans, discipline enthusiasts, or as unique gifts for friends and family. Every purchase supports the Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations podcast, helping us continue to inspire greatness and promote positive change. Visit joeypinz.com/store today and wear your discipline proudly. Joey Pinz merch. Wear it, share it, and live it. Yeah, my sister passed when I was younger, and people have the best intentions, Alex, right? They want to do the right thing, but oftentimes they just say things that are just, I don't know, ridiculous, by the way. But it's a hard one. But But what it did for your TEDx is that it set the stage, and it, realized that, where you're coming from, and what you're going to talk about and the lessons learned, and that's, I don't know, 11, 12 minutes, however long that is. Uh, but it's, there is a certain, I keep telling the same story. You're over 800 episodes now of how I lost the weight. And I almost feel like, oh, geez, everybody knows this, but not everybody knows it, and it's not as tragic, certainly, as what you're talking about, but it is kind of framing. I'm not giving advice here. I'm not good enough to give
Yeah,
advice, that's for sure. But I'm just kind of giving you, I don't know, out of my 2 cents, I guess you could say.
yeah. My wife gave me some feedback yesterday that it made me shift my perspective a little bit. She said, you used for a long time about you talked about losing your job, your wife asking you for a divorce, the medical aspect. A lot of people, like that's a lot of people say that. A lot of people have that going on in their life. A lot of people want to reach out to you because not a lot of people have lost a child. And once again, what I've learned is what we're running from, what we're resisting, is usually the path that we need to go down. So I have a few more podcast episodes coming up. Like I have people reaching out wanting to schedule me to talk about this and talk about the process and to talk about how we can live with purpose and things of that nature. So that's where I'm not running. I haven't completely changed my mind on it, but it's something that's been coming up that I'm like, hey, I need to bring awareness to it. Why is it coming up? And see where we go. But that's the thing I'm at right now. When people ask me, well, what's next for you? I'm doing a lot of podcasts. I'm open for people, scheduling me on podcasts. I'm doing talks. I've done a few talks already in person. People can reach out to me there. And I've stepped away from coaching, since my son passed away. I don't necessarily want to do one-on-one coaching right now. I'll do group coaching, but I won't do one-on-one coaching.
Great pleasure talking to you. And ever since I saw you there on stage at the TEDx, I thought this was a person I'd like to talk to and get to know a little better. Anybody watching or listening, how can they get in touch with you?
So I do a lot of work on my Instagram. My Instagram is at AlexLang22. I have a website that they can reach at. 22. You got that?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
Get the 22. Yes.
The website is alexlangofficial.com. And you can email me at alexlangcoaching@gmail.com. And I'd love to have a conversation.
Alex, next time I'm in the DR, maybe, I don't know. I don't want you to show me surfing. I'm afraid, but maybe we can, have a cup of tea there by the beach.
I'm thinking about coming back up to Florida in a couple of weeks, so maybe we run into each other.
You let me know, Alex. You be well. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, brother. Have a good day.
Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypinz.com. There you'll find lots of resources, and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations.